So why don't I kick things off so we can get right to it? Um, I want to welcome everyone to our first event of ambassador event, circle event of 2026. And um, we are excited to be kicking things off with such an esteemed speaker with Dr. Einat Wilf. For the many new faces here, I'll just introduce myself very briefly. I have had the honor of working with the Danielle Center's probably now 19 years as the Director of Outreach and Development. And I have gotten to know so many of you so well and so grateful, the longstanding friendship and allyship, and looking forward to get to know some of our newcomers. I wanted to do just three housekeeping items. We are recording this because some people couldn't make it and others would like to share it. So we'll be recording this and we'll send it to you later this week. Um, we are also asking that you put questions in the chat, and then later, after Dr. Wilf's remarks, we'll get to the questions and open this up for dialogue and discourse. One of the things about these Ambassador Circle events is that they are meant to be promoting conversation, to hearing different perspectives. So that is something that we really take pride in about being able to give opportunities for people to question and to discuss and amongst themselves and with our speakers. And then we will ask that you mute your microphones until we get to the question and answer part. Before we hand it over to Dr. Wilf, I wanted to say a little bit about who we are as an organization because we do have a lot of newcomers. So the Daniel Centers for Progressive Judaism in Tel Aviv is really the lighthouse for Reform Judaism in Tel Aviv, but really in Israel because of our leadership and our innovative work. What does this really mean? You know, for so long in Israel, Israelis didn't have options in how they practiced their Judaism. And it's, you know, we can get into it, but it was either the Orthodox framework or you're secular. And for all of us in North America, we know that Judaism can be pluralistic, egalitarian, inclusive, and we know that it should be. And that's what we do at the Daniel Centers. We bring these values to Israelis who, for many, it's not foreign, the idea of we shouldn't be egalitarian, but that Judaism can do that. You can balance both. And so through our 5 centers in Tel Aviv and Jaffa, we offer a full range of whatever you can imagine a synagogue should offer and does offer. And we go beyond that. We go within the public school systems to provide the Jewish education framework, but from a reform perspective, which values tolerance, acceptance. These are the core values that I think all of us share here. We run the largest non-Orthodox conversion program in Israel. We've now, for the 3rd year in a row, hit over 300 converts per year that are joining the Jewish faith in an inclusive and open way and process. Rabbi Meir Zari, who many of you know, is the founders and also one of Israel's first Israeli educated Reform rabbis ordained by the Hebrew Union College in Israel. And the speaker series, as I mentioned, is really to give you all insider access to beyond the headlines. Our speakers all volunteer their time, which I think speaks volumes to how much they admire and know that there's a need for the type of work that we are doing in Israel. We have several of our board members, both in Israel and the US, here on the line, and all supporters who really make all the work that we do possible. And we need you. We need you, especially now as Mayor and his team are fighting really post October 7th recovery for the battle, what we call the battle over the Jewish soul of Israel. Where does Israel want to be and need to be? And I'm going to stop speaking, hand it over to Ira Wagner, who's a board member on the US side, a really great board member and a generous supporter. So Ira, I'm zipping my mouth now. It's to you.
Thank you, Edith. It's a pleasure to see everyone here today. I have been a board member of the American Friends of the Daniel Centers for 15 years now, and it's been my great pleasure to get more and more involved with them over the years. And the Daniel Centers have become my home away from home when I visit Israel and visit Tel Aviv. So it's a great pleasure. And Edith just did a great summary of what the Daniel Centers does, but I want to give the staff and Rabbi Azari a shout out because they were all just recently at President Herzog's on Sunday to get honored for their work on the Shonim B'Yachad project, which involves getting students from 20 plus different schools all over Israel Jewish kids, non-Jewish kids, to do artwork together and get to know each other and create art that will end up as big posters in Jaffa Port after Pesach. So if you're in Israel after Pesach, be on the lookout for those. So it's a great pleasure to be involved with Beit Daniel, and I hope that many of you who are on the line for the first time with them today will start to get involved with them as well. So with that said, I'm going to introduce Dr. Wilf. Dr. Einat Wilf is a leading thinker on Israel, Zionism, foreign policy, and education. She was born and raised in Israel. She got her education in America, in France, and in England. And she was a advisor to Vice Prime Minister Shimon Peres, a foreign policy advisor, and then became a member of the Knesset in the Labor Party in 2010, and then the Independence Party all the way through 2013. So since 2013, she's been writing books and speaking and being a professor. She was a visiting professor at Georgetown for a while, and that's brought her to up to today, where she's recently formed a new political party called O's Strength. And we're very much looking forward to hearing from her today. And I just want to say she was on with Danny Gordis about a month ago, and I'm sure many of you heard her with him. And he ended with her by saying that he hopes that one day we will see you sworn in as the Prime Minister of the State of Israel. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor. Thank you.
Well, what a challenge you gave her. It's so nice. I first would like to say welcome again to our ambassador circle. It's so nice to have so many of you here. I would like to say first to Einat, thank you for coming, giving your time, and we're so happy to have you here. I hope that next time, I don't know about prime minister, but maybe a Knesset member or maybe one of the leaders of one of the parties that will run to the next election. Who knows today who will run for the election that will happen probably in the next 4, 5, 6, 7, who knows how many months. This is Israel, guys. Life is complicated, but I think life is somehow became complicated in your world as well. So for years you said, well, what's complicated? How can I understand you? How can we talk about? I mean, this is how we see now you and the life that became complicated overseas from us in your world. So Einat, again, welcome to our ambassador circle. And I would like to start by asking you a very simple question. From the bio that my friend Iris introduced you, we have learned that you work with Shimon Peres and Ehud Barak, Labor Party, and somehow in the last few years, you people will say you moved to the right, and you said again and again, and I accept that you are not, you didn't move to the right, but how do you answer? What happened to you? What made you from Shimon Peres, one of his advisors and supporters? What makes you, in the eyes of so many people, in the other side? Einat, Erev Tov.
Erev Tov. The short answer is known as mugged by reality. The longer answer is, as you correctly said, I grew up and what is known in the Israeli peace camp. Oh, sorry. I see that I just have a short technical issue. Give me a minute. Back in a minute.
No, okay. So I'll say a word about our visit to Shimon Peres, to the President Herzog. It was so nice having about 30 kids and teachers. The President Herzog invited us. He saw the program. It was so lovely to be in his home. Can you imagine to yourself kids from a village called Hura, a village that was hunted by Itamar Ben-Gvir and his policemen. The village was in the middle of a major dispute in Israel, coming to the president's residence, and they were so excited. That was so funny and so nice to see how the president treated them. And,
okay, all set.
Okay, Einat. I try to.
Got it. Okay, now we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I grew up politically, sociologically in what is known the Israeli peace camp, very much a believer that the only thing standing between us and peace is establishing a Palestinian Arab state in the West Bank and Gaza. Therefore, there should be no settlements, ending the occupation. I support, vote for every Israeli prime minister that promises to get us close to that, from Rabin to Peres to Barak to Olmert to the disengagement. I support all that. And like many Israelis, certainly from my political camp, I lived through the failure of the negotiations in Camp David, where Ehud Barak, an Israeli prime minister, elected in a major victory on the promise of making peace, puts on the table a proposal that addresses everything we were told is the obstacle to peace: a sovereign state of Palestine, so no occupation, no settlements, capital in East Jerusalem, including holy sites. We watch Arafat walk away again and again from this offer. We see him received as a hero upon his return from Camp David for having refused and rejected the opportunity to establish a sovereign Palestinian state. We witness no dissenting voices among Palestinians, not even a low-level Palestinian activist living in London writing at a marginal newspaper an op-ed about why didn't we say yes. And I begin to ask a very simple question. Oh, and of course, I lived through the immediate follow-up of that, just the campaign of butchery and massacre that was known as the Second Intifada, the one that appears to now be globalized. So I lived through all that, kind of the highs, the lows, the euphoria, the expectation of peace, the just nihilistic butchery of the Second Intifada. And I begin to ask a very simple question. What do the Palestinians want? Because it's clearly not a state, and it's not an end to the occupation, and it's not dismantling settlements, and it's not a capital in East Jerusalem, and it's not holy sites. Because all of these were on the table again and again and again, and they didn't take it. So what's going on? And during this time, I meet with Palestinians who are presented to me as Palestinian moderates, supposedly kind of my corollaries. I do the research that ultimately becomes the book, The War of Return. And speaking with Palestinians, doing the research, I realized that they've actually always told us what they wanted. We just didn't listen, or when we listened, it sounded so preposterous that we didn't take it seriously. We assumed it was bluster, it was a negotiating position, but they told us. They told us from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. In case you're wondering, free of what? In Arabic, they're clear, from water to water, Palestine will be Arab. And like you said, people say you moved, right, all that. And so recently, a few months ago, I was speaking at this LA Jewish school. And as I'm sure you know, everyone today is like very afraid. So the school principal presents me. He's like, we are here to expose you to a variety of views. So I go on the dais and I'm like, what I'm about to present to you is not a view. And I say, look, think about it. Think as if you're scientists. So we had a hypothesis. The hypothesis had a lot of reasons to recommend it: the mood of the 90s, the end of history, the fall of the Soviet Union, the First Intifada. Our hypothesis was what stands between us and peace is the establishment of one more Arab state on the lands of the defunct Ottoman Empire, the West Bank and Gaza. That's what stands between us and peace. That was the hypothesis. Now comes the part that so many people erase or forget. The hypothesis was tested. And because we're good Jewish scientists, it was tested multiple times with different variables. Is the variable that matters the leadership? We tried with Arafat, we tried with Abu Mazen. Is the variable that matters is that they cannot sign an agreement? We tried through direct negotiations, we tried through disengagement, retreat from territory, as in Gaza. Is the issue that they cannot accept a proposal from Israel? We made it a Barak proposal, Clinton turned it into Clinton parameters. The variables were changed, and every single time the outcome is the same. So you're a good scientist. You look at the utter collapse of all your experiments. You look at all the data. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh. You look at all the data and you say, okay, what alternative hypothesis explains the data? And if you know my work, as I did the research for the War of Return, I came across a quote from Ernst Bevin, the British foreign minister after World War II. He goes to the British Parliament in February 47. And remember, in February 47, there are no excuses. There's no settlement, no occupation, no state of Israel, no Bibi. There are no Palestine refugees, so no one has been displaced. There are no excuses. All the things that we are told are the causes of the Palestinian-Arab wars, violence, terrorism, they don't exist. And yet, Bevin, in order to explain the British failure in carrying out the terms of the mandate to help the Jews achieve sovereignty, says the following to explain British failure. He says, His Majesty's government is faced with an irreconcilable conflict. February 47, he calls it already then irreconcilable. He goes on to say, for the Jews in the land, the top priority, he calls it the point of, the point of principle. He says, for the Jews in the land, the top priority is to establish a sovereign Jewish state. So the Jews want to exercise the universal principle of self-determination. And then he says, for the Arabs in the land, and these are not any Arabs, these are the Arabs that will later hijack the name Palestine to be known as Palestinians. He says, for those Arabs, the essential point of principle, the top priority, he says, is to resist to the last. This word resistance, mukawama, we hear it today. It's in the name of Hamas, that's the M. To resist to the last, you wouldn't say to the middle, to the last, the establishment of Jewish sovereignty in any part of the land. So he's not saying that we're facing a conflict, a normal conflict between two movements for self-determination, each seeking statehood, independence, and sovereignty. He's saying we are faced with an irreconcilable conflict, by definition, by one movement, the Zionist movement, that seeks liberation, self-determination for the Jewish people, and another ideology whose top priority is not to achieve something for their people, but to ensure that the Jews have nothing. So the Bevin hypothesis, the Jews want a state, the Arabs want the Jews not to have a state, amazingly explains everything to the present moment. It explains why the Arabs of Gaza decided to turn Gaza into a weaponized landscape for the purpose of so-called return and liberation of Palestine, rather than turn it into a center for global trade and tourism. So, you know, in science, there's this notion of Occam's razor. The theory that explains the most with the least is the closest to the truth. The Bevin hypothesis explains everything. So what I tell people is this is not a view. It's not a left-wing position or a right-wing position. It's the most empirically established analysis of what the war is about. Now, based on that, you can have a whole bunch of views, prescriptions, but analyzing the conflict, it's empirical. It's not a view.
And I would like in this point to ask, from your presentation, the idea of two-state solution is a mistake, a total dream, that wouldn't be able to be achieved. How do you see the concept that still is there in the West, even in the American administration, even in Trump administration? Two-state solution. No way.
The thing is that what I've discovered, sadly, is that it was always a Jewish discussion. There was never, not for a single moment, in the last century, an Arab, certainly never a Palestinian Arab vision of two states where one of the two is the Jewish state. You know, when the updated book of The War of Return, it got updated in Hebrew. It's translated into English, but our publisher is dragging its feet. So if people after this want to read the updated version, let me know and I'll send them the text by email. But in the updated book, we included a dictionary, a Palestinian Hebrew or Palestinian English dictionary. Because one of the things that the Palestinian Arabs have specialized over the years is in something that a colleague of mine has come to call dual use language. They never lie, to their credit, but sometimes they use language which Westerners or Israelis understand a certain way, but they never said it or meant it. So, for example, two states. You have Palestinians who have said, do say two states. Then we somehow assume, crazy, that one of the two is the Jewish state, but they never said it. And the thing is that very few people, I've made it my specialty, but very few people actually probe them on that. Because if you probe them on the question of, okay, where do you stand on the so-called right of return? There's no such right, but where do you stand on the issue of right of return, perpetual refugeehood? They'll be like, oh, that's holy, that's sacred, that's non-negotiable, that belongs to each individual over the generations. Well, if you put two and two together, then it means that the only two states they've ever imagined or supported is an Arab state in the West Bank and Gaza and another Arab state to replace Israel through the mechanism of so-called refugee return. Again, it's not return, they're not refugees, but that's what they believe in. There was never, in the last century, a Palestinian Arab vision of peace based on two states, where one of the two is the Jewish state. So one of the things that I've realized is that this was always a Jewish discussion. So when people ask me today, so do you still support two states or not, or do you think it's a viable solution? I said, look, I'm done engaging in that intra-Jewish discussion. I've also made it a point on Israel domestically. You know, whenever Netanyahu, for example, goes and says, I've prevented a Palestinian state. I even did a little short video about that. I always tweet that it's not nice to take credit for the one achievement of the Palestinian national movement. No Israeli leader has ever prevented a Palestinian state because they never tried to achieve one, not if it has to live next to a Jewish state, not if it means forgoing the idea of return and perpetual refugeehood. And I've discovered over the years that those are the two solid, reliable litmus tests of whether there is a real vision of living next to a Jewish state. So in the last 2 decades, when I'm in active search of Palestinians who promote that vision, there are about 5 very courageous Palestinians who clearly say that this is their vision. And just in case anyone asks it, because it's the most common question, over the years, long before October 7th, when I said this is their ideology and there are very few exceptions, people told me that can't be, broad brushstroke, we have our extremists, they have their extremists. I was like, it's not going to be this easy. It's a comforting lie. I told them, I'm not moving from my empirically based claim. You think what I'm saying is exaggerated, by all means, I've made it incredibly easy to disprove me. Go find a Palestinian Arab who publicly and in their own words I've invented a word, Westplaining, to the way Westerners, diplomats, journalists, academics explain away what Palestinians sometimes inconveniently say. So find Palestinians who, in their own words, publicly, not mediated by any Westerner, say clearly that their vision of peace is to live next to a Jewish state, not from the river to the sea, and that they understand that the meaning is that there is no right of return into Israel and that they are not fifth generation Palestine refugees. And I tell them, go, disprove me. And over 2 decades, I can share you, either people don't come back, or when they do come back, they come back with the same people I already found.
You don't see difference between the guys sitting in the West Bank and those in Gaza? You don't see any window of opportunities in Ramallah, in Bethlehem, in the voices that sometimes we still talk to them in the West Bank, those who are talking to us, those who are drinking coffee with us. No window of opportunities, nothing there, Einat?
Listen to them, but probe them. One of the reasons that people, especially on the left, don't want to follow my guidelines for asking questions is that they know what answers they're going to get. And they don't want to get those answers because then that will force them to recognize what they don't want to recognize, that in terms of the goals, there is no difference between Gaza and the West Bank, between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. There is a difference in the tactics. After Fatah and the Palestinian Authority and the West Bank Arabs went to war with the Second Intifada, and the butchery of the Second Intifada was as bad as the invasion and massacre of October 7th, they decided to go in the direction of a kind of global cognitive war, isolating Israel in international forums, and they actually outlined it as their goal. And what we saw after October 7th is actually the twin tactics of the violent attack of Hamas and kind of turning Israel and Zionism into this toxic idea worked incredibly well together for the goal of making it impossible for Israel to have a clear-cut victory. So no, there's no difference in the goal. There's a difference in the tactics, but not in the end goal.
So you are, as a Jewish leader, an Israeli leader, you just form a new party, you are running for the election, you want to be a Knesset member, a minister, maybe a prime minister. That will be great to have a woman prime minister in Israel. We almost started the journey, but we are so far in this point from that. What is the future that you see to Israel? Which mean, if I read you correct, if I hear you correct, well, a war and another war and another war. What is the solution that you see as an option for this story in the Middle East?
So, over the years, I read quite a few books on different topics, education, electoral systems, the conflict. And I remember one day kind of reflecting on this and thinking, okay, these are very different topics. Is there like a common thread? And I suddenly realized that the common thread of all my work is that there are no shortcuts. So I now have a new book in Hebrew that will be translated into English, which is called Peace Not Now. And one of my arguments...
It's a great book, by the way. I recommend to read. We'll send you, when the English edition will appear, we'll send you the connection.
Thank you. So the argument in the book is that all the efforts at shortcuts, direct negotiations, disengagement, this leader, that leader, they brought us nowhere close to peace, if anything, the opposite, because they failed to address the only obstacle that ever prevented peace, which is the ideology that by now I've come to term Palestinianism, which is this singular obsession with the non-existence of a Jewish state. So, for example, the first pillar of Oath Party, of the kind of the platform of the party, is called Pursue Peace, based on Arab and especially Palestinian embrace of Zionism. So, on the one hand, what I'm saying is that it is incumbent on every Israeli leader to always present a vision of peace. And I didn't complete the earlier question. The vision of peace doesn't mean that we say what exactly will be the political arrangement. My argument is once the Arabs of Gaza and the West Bank let go of Palestinianism, let go of the singular obsession with the non-existence of a Jewish state, once they finally propose a positive vision, which they haven't for the last century, I actually have note that Israel will play ball. If anything, I find that if I could, I would actually pull Israel back because we're always too eager. If an Arab leader is just a little bit nice to us, we immediately run. And we have to have a little bit of like self-respect and backbone. So I'm actually not concerned about the Jews because, again, the Jews are a minority in an overwhelming Arab and Islamic region. I always say that the Jews always agreed to every two-state solution as long as one of the two is the Jewish state, and the Arabs always rejected a two-state solution if one of the two is the Jewish state. So when I say pursue a vision of peace, it means that Israel has to make it clear that we are peace seekers. This is our vision. Our vision is not permanent war. We might need to, but it's not our vision. But that the bar for peace is nothing less than finally getting rid of the only obstacle that only ever stood in the way of peace, which is this obsession with the non-existence of a Jewish state. So when I say Arab, and especially Palestinian Arab embrace of Zionism, it sounds crazy, but it's actually very basic. It means that Arabs choose to live next to a Jewish state rather than on its ruins. They let go of the notion of return. They let go of the notion that they are perpetual refugees when they live in Gaza, in Ramallah, and that they finally develop a constructive vision. Now, part of the idea of peace not now means that we need to begin to behave like people with a long-term vision. That's part of the idea of being sovereign in the land of Israel. We're home. We're going nowhere, which means we have time. And I would say even this is also part of the thesis of Peace Not Now, is all the shortcuts brought us nowhere close. I actually suspect that if we will finally take the long route, the one that tackles the molten lava at the core of the conflict, that begins to dismantle the ideology, that puts it as a goal, that begins to divert all of Israel's security, diplomatic efforts to ensuring that there's no UNRWA, no return, no refugeehood, that we ensure that nothing gets built in Gaza until 1.5 million Arabs in Gaza are erased from UNRWA's records as Palestine refugees, that anything that gets built is conditional on them saying that Gaza is their final destination, their home, and there's no such thing as a right of return into Israel, working with Arab allies who finally have an Arab and Muslim identity that is not obsessively anti-Zionist, and ask them to help their Arab brethren to develop an Arab and Muslim identity that is not obsessively anti-Zionist. This is, in my view, the vision for Israel. Understand the reality and seek to transform it, like the Allies did with Nazi Germany, and just like America did with Imperial Japan, nothing less.
Let's go for a second to Trump and to
Yes.
Bibi. Trump puts a program. How you see this program and the stuff that is going on right now in the Middle East?
So when I worked with Shimon Peres, he had a phrase that in lovemaking, as in peacemaking, you want to close your eyes a bit. Now, I'm making no commentary on lovemaking. I will say that in peacemaking, it was an absolute disaster. It even had a fancy diplomatic term in the 90s. It was called constructive ambiguity. The notion was, let's fudge the issues. They're a bit too difficult. Let's get the sides to sign something that will build trust. Then we'll tackle the more difficult issues. We know it's been a disaster. So I developed an alternative concept. I call it constructive specificity. And I say this, what I think Israel should have done, I mean, if we had done other things, we wouldn't have gotten to this point. But okay, we're at this point. What Israel should have done, remember when President Trump announced his 20-point plan, the Israeli prime minister stands there, and what's the only thing he has to say is, we don't like kind of the Palestinian state thing. And I'm thinking, really? This is our vision at this moment? We are the people who kind of say, no. This was the moment to say, look, we understood that America, in order to get all these Arab countries to sign, had to engage in constructive ambiguity. But we're not going to do that. So we want you to know what is the Israeli definition and understanding of Gaza will not be a threat, a reformed Palestinian Authority, de-radicalization. These are great words. We just want to tell you what it means. It means that no one in Gaza is a Palestine refugee. And until they are not removed from UNRWA's records as Palestine refugees, and UNRWA's mandate is terminated in Gaza and the West Bank and in general, we will not consider this as Gaza not being a threat. We will not consider this as the Palestinian Authority being reformed. There should not be a single neighborhood in the Palestinian Authority called a refugee camp, because it's not. There are neighborhoods and no one there is a refugee. As long as Abu Mazen walks around with a key, we don't consider the Palestinian Authority reformed. As long as there is any talk, any vision, any document that Palestinians claim to have a right to settle inside the sovereign state of Israel in the name of return, we will not consider it as having fulfilled the 20-point plan. So my view is we need to be very specific in our vision of what this means, because the idea that you get to peace by fudging issues, it's bizarre. It's never worked. Peace was only ever achieved, actually, when things were very clear, when typically at the end of wars, losers knew they lost, the winners were clear that they won, and then you can make peace. Fudging issues never brought peace.
Einat, let's go to the story of the BDS and the way that Israel is seen today in the West. In the United States, most of us in this gathering is from North America. The fact that is Israel losing in this field, and many Jews feeling a threat, even threat to their life. Synagogues are burned. People feel anti-Semitism in a way that they never felt, and it's no doubts hit and affect the security of the state of Israel as well. You know, losing the community in America, the Jewish community in America, is a disaster for the state of Israel. What can you say about the BDS, the situation right now from an Israeli perspective?
Certainly. As I'm sure you know, I've been following the rise of anti-Zionism in the West for at least 20, even 25 years now. I've come to look at it through a prism, a lens that I've called the placard strategy. It's because you can see it on placards in anti-Israel demonstrations, where the placards are built like simple equations: Israel, Zionism, Star of David. And the placard strategy has been so successful that I doubt anyone has ever seen a placard that says Zionism equals the political movement for self-determination of the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland, which would be clearly the only accurate placard. The placard strategy has been so successful that everyone knows what's on the other side of the equation sign. Israel, Zionism, Star of David equals racism, imperialism, colonialism, ethnic cleansing, then it escalates, Nazism, genocide. Now, if you live in America in 2020, at the height of Black Lives Matter, suddenly there's a new placard. Because I follow it, I always see what appears, what goes, what comes. It says Zionism equals white supremacy. I remember seeing it in real time and thinking, yay, the liberation movement of the Jewish people, finally the Jews are considered white. Took a while, but yay for us. And somehow, interestingly, Jews and their liberation movement are called white at the precise moment that whiteness is evil. And of course, this is the essence of the placard strategy. The words are not chosen because they share any relationship to reality. They are, if anything, the inversion of reality. Zionism is the most anti-imperial, decolonial movement, salvaging Jews from conditions of racism, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, genocide in Europe and the Arab world. So it's not about reality. It's about the fact that those words are considered synonymous with evil. Now, I recently I saw a talk by a former Soviet operative about how to conduct mass manipulation, a Soviet expertise. And he said, look, mass manipulation, and that's what we're living through right now, he says, involves the following: simple visual symbols. That's the placard strategy does that, right? They're very strong, the visual symbols, these short equations. The messages are simple. Zionism equals this. Then he said repetition. I'm sure you all experience it. These equations are endlessly repeated. I remember this. I mean, you will give an anti-Israel speaker 30 seconds on television, they will manage to say racism, apartheid, genocide. It doesn't matter what the question was. Endlessly repeated. And I'm sure you know by now, brain research shows that our brains are not wired for truth. Our brains are wired for repetition. Things that get repeated ultimately are perceived to be true. And then he said something that I thought was very revealing. He said prestige, because prestige paralyzes judgment. And we know that the placard strategy, basically, by the way, I'm sure you are aware of Isabella Tabarovsky's work. Her recent great book, Be a Refusenik, really exposed that all the words we're using now, the placard strategy is the Soviet creation post-World War II to replace the discredited Tsarist anti-Semitism with a new respectable anti-Zionism using these libels. And what the Soviets began in the 70s is the process of laundering these placards, these equations through institutions of prestige. Zionism is racism, gets laundered through the UN General Assembly. Israel's apartheid through the UN Conference on Racism in Durban, taking the case of Israel's genocide to the International Court of Justice. It's the same playbook. Launder the libels through institutions of prestige, so-called human rights group, academia. You'll get a PhD for Zionism is colonialism. You'll get tenured for Israel's an apartheid state. Now, I compare all of these to metaphorical tunnels, because they have been dug carefully over time under the most hallowed institutions of the United States and the world, the UN, the top universities, as I said, so-called human rights organizations. And what happened on October 7th is, as in Israel, people came out of those tunnels to reveal what has been built for a very long time. Hussein Abu Bakr Mansour, if you know, he has a great Substack and a very important thinker. He's a former Egyptian who has de-radicalized himself by sheer force of reason. He described the kind of the manifestations, the glee, the euphoria on the streets of Western cities on October 7th and beyond, he called it a symbolic participation in the pogrom. And it's true. What they basically said, they wanted to participate in something that for so long they have wished for. Because after October 7th, there was a new placard that said, "Keep the world clean." And it had an image of a Star of David or a flag of Israel in a trash bin. And this is, I remember when I saw it first, as I told you, I follow these placards. And I was like, this is it. We've reached the culmination of this strategy that has been prepared for decades. Keep the world clean. It is the most ancient and most dangerous idea, certainly when it comes to Jews, that there is a clean world, a better world, utopia that awaits us on the other side of cleaning the world of the collective Jew. And this is the mass manipulation happening right now. It is an assault on Jewish life everywhere and anywhere. It only pretends to be about Israel, but it's never been about Israel, only insofar that it wants Israel gone. But it is an assault on Jewish life. And the only question that remains in my mind, and it's the biggest question for which no one has an answer, is America truly exceptional? Because everywhere in the world where anti-Zionism came to rule a society, in the Arab world, in Iran, in the Soviet Union, in Eastern Europe, everywhere that anti-Zionism came to be the dominant ideology of a place, no Jews could live. That's it. You actually do not have a single example of an anti-Zionist country, society, political party that ultimately Jews thrived and stayed, not including also anti-Zionist Jews. Never helped them, didn't save them. So the question is America exceptional? Is America going to be the one place that will not fall under the spell of this mass manipulation, where anti-Zionism will not come to rule the country, and where there will be enough Americans pushing back and saying, not here?
Einat, I would like to take you for a minute to talk about the story within Israel, the Israeli society. Many people question the story, is Israel a liberal state? Is Israeli society is still a pluralistic state? Who we are in this point? You know, we see the government, Itamar Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, people that gather here very much, I don't want to say afraid, but doubt the ability to maintain this story, the Jewish state with leaders like Itamar Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, women's rights, human rights within Israel. I'm not talking about the territories right now. Let's leave the territories. Who we are at this point from your perspective, and then a few questions from the community that puts a lot of questions in the chat. We won't take all of them, but 2 or 3 of them.
Okay.
Yeah, please. Israel.
Here, I must say that I tend to worry much less. I worried before October 7th. I worried about our enemies, our actual enemies. One of the reasons that one of the pillars, another pillar of ours, is called from exilic mindset to a sovereign conduct, is that one of the characteristics of an exilic mindset is because the Jews were so powerless under conditions of exile, we tended to view other Jews as enemies because we couldn't actually deal with our real enemies. The only way we could ever deal with them is flee to somewhere else. So I am not of the view that the enemies are within. At the end of the day, even extremist Jews are extremists within a small community that is outnumbered by a factor of 1 to 60 by an Arab world and by a factor of 1 to 200 by a Muslim world that is still, by and large, despite against shining examples of change, committed to the non-existence of Jewish sovereignty anywhere in the land of Israel, in any part. So I have to say that in that sense, Israeli society remains one of the most robust kind of civic argumentation societies in the world. If anything, I mean, I think any other society would have collapsed under the ongoing, pressures of enemies that are constantly assaulting, butchering you, again, with nihilistic goals. And to maintain through that a democracy, to maintain through that civic argumentation, that I think is actually an achievement that people completely underestimate. So my colleague, Dr. Shani Moore, and I, we write a lot about Israeli democracy and actually how robust it is and how old it is. People are often surprised when I tell them that Israel is one of the oldest democracies in the world. People tend to think of Israel still as a very young country. And they don't think of it this way. And until I remind them that much of Asia, Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, Africa, Latin America were not democracies until fairly recently. Even America did not become truly universal suffrage democracy until the 60s. Israel is actually one of the oldest continuous democracies in the world. I would argue that the thing that sustains it more than anything is not this or that institutional arrangement, even though parliamentary democracies tend to be the model of the most successful long-term democracies. But I would argue that it sits on a long tradition of Jewish argumentation. And we tend to have, Jews have both very long and very short memories, because I taught a course in Georgetown about Zionism and anti-Zionism. And when you read in real time what Jews called each other, what Bundists called the communists, what the communists called the Zionists.
It goes back to the Bible. It goes back to the Bible.
I know. We are living in the era, by the way, of greatest Jewish agreement in Jewish history. So I admit that in that and I know it annoys a lot of people because everyone's like, but I tend to here not see that as the threat. There's a lot of threats on kind of how we sustain ourselves as a welfare state with people who don't serve and all that. But those are policy issues that I think we can muster the ability to solve.
Okay. Edith, maybe we'll take 2 or 3 questions, short answers.
Yeah.
I know that people out of us would like to leave in a few minutes.
Sure.
So
I think one question, and you might have answered in different ways, but I just want to synopsize some of the questions. Kay Bagon, I apologize if I'm saying the name wrong. What is your thoughts about Israeli Arabs living in Israel proper, as we would say, in Haifa or other cities, Jaffa and so forth? What are your thoughts? How do we, I'm expanding on that because I know a lot of people, there are some inequities. What are your thoughts on this issue?
So this is part of my general view. This is the second pillar of Oz Party. It's called public services to those who serve the public. And the central thinking here says this: ultimately, welfare states are based on a notion of common values and mutual responsibility. And Israel has to finally have a thick notion of citizenship. And as I'm sure you know, there's a lot of Arabs who say, oh, I'm a Palestinian with an Israeli passport, and that's a very thin notion of citizenship. So as with peace, when I say pursue peace, but based on Arab embrace of Zionism, so it's a big vision, but with a high bar, this is my vision also for both Haredis and Israeli Arabs. It says the following: everyone gets drafted, everyone of the appropriate age. Women, I don't like the fact that some women are obviously drafted and some can decide if they want to or not. Women, men, all kinds of Jews, Arabs. everyone is invited in. So in that sense, it's a radically egalitarian vision. But if you refuse, and invited in is to military service. Even for Arabs, I don't want it to be a national service. I think it's important that they put on uniform. There has to be a sense, this is your country, it needs defending, and you are invited to participate in the thing that constitutes the sense of Israeli mutual responsibility. Until we have peace, Israel is a country that needs defending, and everyone needs to mobilize to its defense. So my view is everyone gets invited, but if you reject and refuse, I compare you to the wicked son in the Haggadah. Then you have basically said, this is yours, not mine. And then you'll remove yourselves from all the systems of mutual support that constitute the Israeli welfare state. I also think that Israel should only fund one kind of education system, public, Zionist. That goes to my idea that Arabs can be Zionists. I think it's a great idea. There's nothing wrong with it. And in the Hebrew language, because a proper nation, a sovereign nation, one that looks to the long term, does not create hostile autonomies within it. It provides an education that allows everyone to be a member of society, and only schools that provide this basic education for all, public, Zionist, in Hebrew, can then get budgets to add other things like Arabic language or Gemara, Jewish texts. But my view is that Israel's Arabs have to be fully brought in to a thick notion of Israeli citizenship, which includes Zionism, Hebrew, and military service.
Another question, Edith?
Yes, hold on. Let me get back to that. So going back to your whole issue about it will be interesting to see what in America happens, right? Robbie Anna Hare has asked, as we know, we've been told that the only place in the world that anti-Semitism of Germany in the 30s could return. What are your thoughts on that?
The only what?
Let me read it again. Sorry about that. My question is, a very well-known American once told me that the States was the only place in the world that the anti-Semitism of Germany in the 30s could return.
I have to say that the anti-Semitism of Germany is what worries me now, because again, it's the modern, it's the kind of the new iteration of it. Right now, I think the greater threat is this mass manipulation of anti-Zionism, where, again, nowhere to the present has any country or society that was ruled with anti-Zionism as a core ideology where Jews remained. I can tell you, I speak in American campuses, groups, again and again, the people who have the most confidence in fighting the rise of anti-Zionism in America, in the West, they are disproportionately, not only, but disproportionately Jews whose families came to America from the Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, Iran, and the Arab world. Why? Because they still have the muscle memory of only their parents, pretty much, of living in a society that told them, we love Jews, we have nothing against Jews. Sometimes Jews were at the forefront of saying that. Our only problem is with Zionism. But the playbook was very clear. Step one, Zionism was demonized and criminalized. Step two, Jews were charged with the crime of Zionism. And Jews were never able to claim that they're not Zionists. It didn't really matter. My colleague Adi Schwartz wrote a beautiful piece about the wealthiest Jew in Iraq, Shafiq Das, who was no Zionist, but was charged with the crime of Zionism, hanged, and the Jews of Iraq got the message. So Uh, the anti-Semitism of Germany, by and large, even though some people are going to it, we know to identify it. We have the ability to defend against it. It is anti-Zionism where we tend to not really understand still what's going on and to understand that it's a threat to Jewish life. And I would say the situation that makes it even worse is that whereas in Germany, it was only in Europe, and you could at least flee if you still had enough time to America or Canada if they let you in time. But now it's global. Now it's global.
I know we're over time, but there's two really interesting questions that I think our audience would like to hear,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Sure.
One of them is from Dov Eden. Will Oz run in the upcoming election, and with whom might it join forces to be sure of passing the minimal number of mandates required to achieve representation? That's number one. And this, I think we should leave it on the last one after this, is what might be a good Zionist placard message in the US? And that's from Eugene Major.
Okay. So first on the issue, Oz essentially, I would say, is a startup with the potential to be a unicorn. Unlike in America, where people follow undecideds as a very clear figure in upcoming elections, in Israel, the number of undecideds is thrown to the garbage. And when you see polls in Israel, it's only the people who said who they're going to vote for. But if there was a bar for the undecideds, it would be the largest party in Israel. The number today is between 20 and 30% of the voting public. It's the highest number within a very kind of long period of elections. That means 24 to 36 seats in the Knesset is the largest party by far. We are essentially appealing to that group. Oz, I think, has ideas that, again, are visionary, they're bold, and they cut across political camps. They don't sit into any stale category. Pursue peace based on Arab embrace of Zionism. Pursue peace is supposedly a very left-wing position, but saying that the is nothing less than Arabs ending their obsession with the non-existence of Zionism is supposedly very right-wing. When you put the two together, it doesn't even make it a centrist position. It's something new. Saying public services to those who serve the public. I say a strong welfare state, a radical egalitarian draft. This is supposedly very left-wing. But I'm saying if you refuse to serve in the military, you're out. Some people say this is very right-wing, militaristic. Put the two together. What is that? So I think we have the ability to actually give a response. We sometimes say we provide a home to the homeless, to give a response to so many people who actually look at the current political landscape and don't see what they're looking for because they feel there is a need for deep transformation, and they're not seeing anyone who's offering this in terms of the vision and the ideas. So even though we're a startup that has the potential to be a unicorn, we do offer a small insurance policy, which is if ahead of the deadline, which is about 6 weeks before elections, when the lists must be submitted, the list to the Knesset, if we see that we haven't amassed enough support, then we either will not submit a list or we will join other parties that we see are closest to us. But the decision is still far away. And right now we're entirely focused. And I have to say, from day to day, there's greater enthusiasm. If you're interested, please go to the Oz Party website, ozparty.co.il, and register. We've created a WhatsApp and mailing group called Ozionists for Jews around the world who want to support us and to let their Israeli colleagues know about the party and its ideas. So I think it's worth making the effort because I think we have something really special and relevant for this moment. And on the
in the chat you have the address of
We put it in.
oh,
Yeah.
good, thank you.
And the placard.
What the placard strategy for Zionism will be is I'm happy to say I'm actually about to launch. We've been working on it for a while. It will be a kind of 5-minute, very carefully kind of invested in video animation about what Zionism is. And we've created a lot of placards around it about Zionism as home and liberation and inspiration and innovation, but really telling the story of Zionism and to understand that Zionism became a toxic word not because of Israeli actions. Zionism became a toxic word because there has been a deliberate global campaign to turn Zionism into a toxic word through the placard strategy. And the first thing we have to do is see it for what it is. And they spent our collective Jewish time by forcing us to address each individual libel when we fail to understand the forest and to see the forest for the trees, that this was about creating a global mass manipulation mindset where the world would be a better place if we only got rid of the collective Jew. So for example, that's one of the messages of Isabella Tabarovsky, that if you follow the example of the refuseniks, long before they fought Soviet anti-Zionism, their first step was to remind themselves what being Jewish was all about. And for me, it's what being a Zionist is all about. And I still think it's one of the most inspirational, can-do, against all odds movements in the world. And perhaps that's also the reasons it's so maligned.
Einat, thank you so much for your time and the way that you present somehow a different attitude than part of those who gather here. Different attitude and different perspective. It's so nice that all of you heard that, and that I hope will open a new discussion, a very interesting discussion among us Reform Jews from North America and from Israel. We sometimes hear ourselves, and here is an opening call, open call. See a little bit more than just what you feel or what you think and what your rabbi or your friend told you. Einat, it was really great to have you here. And I would like to introduce Rabbi Benny Minitz that will say the prayer for the state of Israel. I think that we need that in this point. Rabbi Benny, where are you? Can you open the microphone? Yeah, here. I saw that you were here. Where are you, Benny? You're not here?
I see he's still in
I'm here.
Yes.
Okay, Rabbi Benny is serving our community in Jaffa. Rabbi Benny Minitz is now the chairperson of Maram, the Association of Reform Rabbis in Israel. I just started his term in this post, and he works a lot at Beit Daniel, doing a lot of bar mitzvot, weddings. And Rabbi Benny will be in the States during March, as I will be there as well. And we'll share the dates that he will be in the places. He will be in New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. And if you want to have him as a speaker in your community, please call us, write to us. We'll be very happy to make the shidduch, to bring him or me to your communities. So I hope to hear from you. Rabbi Benny, the prayer for the state of Israel, and thank you for staying more than when we planned. Benny, please.
Hi. Sorry, we have an unexpected late group in Mishkenot here in Jaffa, and they are too young and too shouting. Protector, rock and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for our redemption. Shield it beneath the wings of your steadfast love, and spread over it the shelter of your peace. May a spark of your spirit inspire the actions of its president, prime minister, official, judges, and advisors, that they may follow the path of righteousness, liberty, and freedom. Strengthen the hands of those who build and protect our holy land, and grant them salvation and life. Grant peace to this land, and everlasting joy to its inhabitants. Benia, to all the people of Israel, throughout the lens of their dispersion, plant within their hearts the love of Zion, and may those of our people who are so inspired come to Jerusalem, your city, which bears your name. Spread your spirit over all the inhabitants of our land. Uproot hatred, jealousy, and evil. Plant in our hearts love and peoplehood, peace and friendship, and speedily fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, neither will they learn war anymore. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Okay.
And in that, you will be very happy to hear what Dov Adam just wrote. He lives in Tel Aviv. You just now earned my vote, his vote. So you did do a his bite in Tel Aviv. That's well, so nice.
And
Dov,
we will
good
do
luck.
we'll do the prayer for the hostage, not hostages, because we cannot forget that we have one final individual still in Gaza. So Tammy, if you can put that on the screen for Rabbi Benny.
Oh, it's also me?
Yeah, you're on today.
Oh. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, Yaakov, Leah and Rachel, Bilhah and Zilpah, and our warriors, Joshua, David, Judah, and Dvorah, Yael, and Judith. May he bless the captured IDF soldiers and the many kidnapped citizens. And
Soldiers.
Did not update that.
one soldier, one specific soldier, Ran Gvili, held in captivity in Gaza. May it be your will, Adonai Tzvaot, God of hosts, to rescue and redeem this soul and return him swiftly to his family on the land of Israel. As it is written, thus said Adonai, a cry is heard in Ramah, wailing, bitter weeping, Rachel weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted for her children who are gone. Thus said Adonai, restrain your voice from weeping, your eyes from shedding tears, for there is a reward for your labor, declares Adonai. They shall return from enemies' land. Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you
So-
very much for joining us this evening in Israel, this morning or afternoon in North America. I hope to see you soon in Israel. We again say thank you to Einat for your words, and
Thank you.
well, hope that we'll have a better time. להתראות.
Thank you,
See.
everyone, for joining.
תודה רבה,
לילה
עינת.
טוב.
again,
בשמחה.
תודה
לילה טוב.
רבה. תודה. Tammy and Edith, let's talk in the
Yeah.
guys. Okay, bye.
Edith, you're on mute.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
We'll just keep it
hello.
after.
Hi.
Won't let
Actually,
me leave the meeting.
Mayor?
1 second, Larry.
Oh, sure.
Won't let me leave the meeting.
Oh, we have to wait for everyone.
Leave meeting. Leave meeting.
And I think Einat is still on.
I was just
Yeah,
gonna
I'm
say-
trying to get out, but it won't.
Oh.
let-
Well, you
I'm
were wonderful.
pressing
Thank
leave
you.
meeting, but it won't let me. I don't know.
Well, nobody wants you to go. Hold on 1 second.
If you can,
Tammy, I
just
don't know
throw
how we
me
do
out.
that. Hi, everyone.
Dove, if you're still here, you can find the email address, Einat's email address on her website that we sent. I can send the website again quickly, but there's a contact us page on her website, so you can go there and send her an email.
I don't think he's there. Oh,
Guys,
He's still
I
here.
suggest that we'll close this meeting here and go back in 2 minutes to the same
Okay.
spot.
let's send him.
Okay.
So
Bye.
bye.